Hey there, this is R.A. Manard Mitrava for Monks of the Way, the weekly service for October 3rd. And it is now at 7:01, so I will give it a couple of minutes for people that would like to show up, and I suppose while I'm speaking, I should also be um, posting that now is when it's happening, but honestly, I don't advertise these things much. I suppose after I have a year's worth of them, I'll advertise them more than now. I don't know how many I have right now. 20? How many weeks are in a year? Anyway, I guess I can mention that the topic is the Compassion Sutta. It's compassion and kindness is the topic of that sutta. I guess I want to mention the difference between a sutta and a sutra. One S-U-T-T-A, one S-U-T-R-A. And a sutta is the Pali Canon, the Theravada uh, works, pardon me, where they're believed to be the earliest and the um, they're believed to be the most pure, although certainly pure is a is an opinion, but certainly earlier works, and those of actual Buddha, plus the monks that knew him and the monks that knew the monks that knew him and that kind of thing. And then later on you have sutras, which are primarily authored in China and go through many different revisions, whereas the Theravada work, the Pali Canon, doesn't have multiple versions. It may have multiple translations. Uh, People may disagree about what it really means, but the words are the words. And with the sutra, the words are finally what they are now, but they've gone through many different revisions, much like the books of the Bible. And things have been taken in and taken out, and so on and so forth. Um, there are some of the Pali Canon that is in Pali and Sanskrit. People believe that that's the difference between sutta and sutra, is that one is in one language and one is the other, where sutta is Pali Canon and the other is sutra, would be Sanskrit. And that's not necessarily true, but it's some of the stuff that is sutta is also in Sanskrit, but not a complete version. The only complete version is in Pali. Um, and Monks of the Way, we go a little bit backwards to that. We're we're not so much on what the other monks said, but just what Buddha said, the things that he actually did and said. And so it's a smaller portion of the Pali Canon. Not that we don't visit those things and debate those things, but that they're not our primary material and focus. Anyway, looks like it's been about almost 5 minutes. So I suppose. Oh yeah, there's pardon me, a couple of repeat congregation members there. Hello to you there, and it's the Compassion Sutta that we're talking about today, and it's a short one, but it's packed with a lot of stuff. And if you don't have a lot of context, some of it is kind of lost. And so I wanted to mention it. This particular version is, of course, my personal translation. Most people will find that it's not far at all from the other translation that monks have done. However, mine is geared more towards the American English reader to be more more understandable and to use words that we're more familiar with than the words that we're normally translated into. And some of the just little bits of concepts are a little bit different, but not much. All in all, they did a pretty darn good job translating this. I can't say they dropped the ball, really. Anyway, it says this is how it should be for a person skilled in goodness and knows the ways of serenity. Notice it says should be, doesn't say will be, doesn't say is, says should be. So this is how it should be for a person skilled in goodness and knows the way of serenity. That person will be able and upright, direct and gentle in speaking, humble and not trying to convince anyone of their greatness, satisfied and easy to compliment, not weighed down with too many tasks, and simple but productive in their ways. That's pretty straightforward. That says quite a bit, doesn't it? That's pardon me, quite a bit to digest there, but we're seeing all these good qualities of a person, these things that are cultivated, these things that have a cause. And of course, the cause that they're stating here is that they're skilled in goodness and they know the way of serenity. So we're not at a loss for how this happens either in the teachings, but I'll continue. Serene and calm, wise and skilled, not proud or needy in general. They should not do the slightest thing that any wise man would later condemn. I'm going to hold on for just a second there, too. That says quite a bit. Serene and calm, wise and skilled, not proud or needy in general, and should not do. They keep saying should not or should instead of is or are, and that's very important to note here. You know, things don't go according to plan all the time, and, you know, everybody has an off day, and sometimes things don't work out, and that's just the way life is. I think we cover that in many of the teachings. We find that they should not do the slightest thing that any wise man would later condemn. But, you know, like I said, stuff does happen. But a wise person should be able to be on board with the things that you're saying, even if not at first, certainly after debate. All living things without exclusion, if they are weak or strong, gigantic or big or medium or small or tiny, seen and unseen, that pretty much covers everything, right? Those that reside near and very far away, those that exist or have yet to exist, may all beings be joyful and serene. Now I want to call attention to a place in here that's important before we continue, which is those that exist or have yet to exist. Now this is Buddha's understanding and vision of how the universe works. That things come into existence, there's transformation. Not that these things that exist have always existed, that there's change involved. Buddha is very big on change. To continue, let no one deceive another or hate another no matter the situation. Let no one because of anger or disagreement hope for harm of another, like a mother would defend her life with would defend with her life her only child. With endless compassion and kindness of heart, we should love all living things. So he's saying that it's extreme. He very rarely says that anything extreme is good. But here, he's saying that it should be that way. It should be extreme. To continue sending it out and covering the universe, spreading up to the heavens and down to the deep, radiating endlessly, free from anger and disagreement, either standing or walking, sitting or laying down, free from mental impairment, a person should carry with them the memory of this state of being. This is what is called the grand abiding. by not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clear vision, being free of desires of the senses, is not born into physical reality again. So he's telling us that there is this thing that's the grand abiding, and it's a state of being, he says. And he says we can carry with us the memory of this state of being, to bring this state of being with us as we go, no matter what we're doing. We're, like he says, we're standing, we're walking, we're sitting, we're laying down, it doesn't matter. And I actually include in my meditation stuff the grand abiding, which is in a continued version of that, a more detailed, more focused version of that for meditation. But really, what he said is actually perfectly fine. I mean, you don't really need more than that if you're there. But to get there, you need something. And so this isn't a standalone work. This is a short discourse, a short thing that he said, because he's covered so much of this. But this is a shorter, more precise, exacting version that he gives you. So there's the meditation aspect that I wanted to mention there, the radiating endlessly, the compassion and kindness there. And I also wanted to mention the way of being that he's mentioning here, that we're not supposed to deceive anybody, not supposed to hate anybody, no matter the situation, because certainly there's no call for it. Let nobody, because of anger or disagreement, hope for harm of another. That's another thing too. And this compassion and kindness of heart that he's talking about, that's so extreme, he's saying, let this be the case, that it's something that we should move towards. And he's not asking that much if you look at it. I have a question. Been meeting people all my life, in my family, friends, and at work, who test me to the core. They have been mean. One's been abusive since childhood, and strangers have been abusive. Is it karma? Is it this person's karma? All I have been is never to intentionally hurt anyone or any living being, and been more patient and loving. Okay. Well, Gita, pardon me, I can't say that it is just your karma, but I can say that it's included in your karma, if that makes sense. So such a thing is not going to be a repeated normal thing for you unless it's included in your karma. However, this doesn't mean it's the cause, and doesn't mean it's not. It's probably interwoven a little bit, connected, very connected. So when we have people that are repeatedly abusive, we have a certain relationship to them. And you'll find that they are getting something from the exchange that they want. A feeling of superiority, of maybe a power, um, to know that there's a shared suffering that you have, that they also have, because that's why they do this, is because they suffer. It's, people go, well, they're just trying to be mean, or they're just trying to be, the best or whatever. But really, it's their suffering that fuels it inside. So, I would say that you need to look at how you are in these situations, and look at how they unfold, how they come to be in the first place, when they're happening, how the exchange is, what the other person is getting out of it, what they want you to get out of it, and figure out how to change it. So I'll give you an example. A person was abusive at work to this other person, and they just took it and said, yes, sir, and that kind of thing. And they talked to me about it, and I told them, you are equal to them as a human being. I mean, it doesn't matter if they're superior to you at work, or they're your older brother, or your aunt or uncle, or doesn't matter what. You're equal as people, apart from whatever station in life there might be. So your boss is supposed to be in charge of you, but that doesn't give them the right to be abusive. That's beyond the relationship they're supposed to be having. That's not their place to do that. So I gave that person many different options, and one of them was you could just treat the other person exactly like they treat you as they do it. So, for instance, the boss calls the employee a bad word. Well, then the employee calls the boss a bad word about the same. And that can cause an exchange that's helpful, because they can say, hey, you can't talk to me that way. Well, you know what? You're not supposed to talk to me that way either. If you want to communicate to me that I need to do a better job about something, that's one thing. But being rude is something else. And if it's uncalled for me to be rude to you, then you should be setting the example, and you shouldn't be being rude to me. You're the example. You're the boss. We're supposed to be doing what you do, being successful like you're successful. And you're not helping me if you're doing this. You're not helping anyone. And that's confrontational. Not everybody can be into that. And maybe it's not best. It's certainly not usually the way I would handle it, but hey, it's a way. Another way is to just let the person know that that's not appreciated and it's not called for. That you understand the things that they're saying perfectly well, you believe. If not, certainly they can talk more about it, but that calling names is actually going to hurt the process, not help the process. And with respective people, you have to be able to respect each other in the workplace, in the family, day to day, walking down the street. I mean, everybody deserves a certain amount of respect. They deserve to have their own dignity, basically. That's an important word there, dignity. Everybody deserves their dignity. And so to try to take it away from a person without cause is certainly not right. Certainly not a right action, not right speech. And I mean, I wouldn't approach it exactly that way, but I think you get what I'm saying about that approach. Uh, it's also somewhat confrontational, but it's not confrontational towards the person. It's confrontational towards the behavior. I'm not saying that you're a bad person. I'm saying what you're doing is not right. You know, good people do things that are not right. It happens. So another way is to circumvent. To Bosses usually have a boss, and in families, there's usually a superior somewhere that they have that you can go to about it and ask them what they think you should do together with what you've decided to do, or separately. There's also basically concentrating on such people where you are extra nice to them. You go out of your way to do things for them. And it can seem sometimes to people it's worthy of of note that it seems like maybe you like to be abused if you do this, but that's not the case. You know that they suffer, and you're trying to be nice. You're trying to be compassionate. You're trying to be kind to that person. You know they're having a hard time. You may not know what it's about, but you know they are. And normally that person will ask you why you're like that. And you're like that because you're like that, but also what I said, that you feel for them. You know, they've got something going on. If they want to talk about it, that's fine. You know, if they don't, that's fine too. And, you know, sometimes it can seem like that's not appropriate at work, that's too personal, but that kind of thing can really drastically change a work dynamic for the better and for everybody, not just you. You have to remember that too. They're suffering and they're venting that suffering, they're expressing that suffering, not just on you. They're visiting it on themselves and they're visiting on you and others too. It's almost never the case that they're just venting it in one direction or at one person. It's out of control. That's the whole point, is that it's gone to the point of suffering and they can't work it out. Not yet, anyway. And so those are some of my recommendations about people that are abusive or rude. And as far as inside, you have the decision of how you're going to feel about it. And you may or may not be in control of those feelings, but eventually, you know, if you're calm and measured, you're going to be in control of those things someday. It's okay to feel whatever you feel. Certainly feel it and let it pass. And then the way you view it, your view on the subject, like the path of eight, your view on this subject is going to color the things that come after it. Your urges, your emotions, the things you think about it, the things you say about it, do about it. So if you're seeing that person as a victim of their own suffering, or you know, somebody else's abuse, then it's hard to be angry with them. It's hard to just, you know, be sad and not know what to do, because you have this view, you understand how things are happening. Like in the Four Truths, first of all you have to understand that things happen and accept that things happen. And then you have to know that there's a cause and there's a cure and there's an end to things. So there's a process. Things coming to existence, they transform. Things that come into existence normally pass away at some point. So these are Buddhist concepts to be working on, trying to understand in our day-to-day lives. And watching, you know, watching that things have a way of expressing themselves. So we should be mindful of what's inside of us. We don't need to be afraid, angry, sad, because these things happen to us. It's okay to be, but we don't need to be. And when we let them pass, let those emotions pass, we can be productive about it. We can move forward. I hope I didn't talk too long about that. Anyway, if you want to ask more about that, or if there's any additional questions, you guys can just let me know, and I'd be happy to address those things. This compassion, I'll talk while you're typing or thinking about that. This compassion sutta is very important, I think, because it's very clear on what Buddha says he thinks should be going on with a person that is skilled in goodness and knows the ways of serenity. And that is very on the topic that you asked, that being skilled in goodness and knowing the way of serenity. we find that that is so much of living right there. Let's see. Explain greater detail. What exactly is grand abiding, and what would be a good way to meditate on it? Okay. Well, the it's a state of mind, a state of being, and it's a free radiation of compassion. And so in the meditation practice, I would say, and the meditation practice will increase this in your day-to-day life also when you're just not even thinking about it. Once again, these things inside you will find ways of expression. And that's why those negative things are so destructive to you, is because they can find ways of expression without you having any conscious, you're not meaning to do it, and it happens. But this also happens with the positive things, with the productive things. They also find their expressions. And so with the meditation, you can get into meditation, get into the basic calm state, however you might do that, listening to breath, looking at a candle flame, just concentrating on silence, letting your thoughts dwindle down and get quiet, however you do that. And then feeling and seeing that center inside you, wherever that might be, doesn't really matter physically where it might be. And it doesn't matter if there is a location in your mind or that you're concentrating on for sure. But the core of your being is basically what I'm talking about. And so you want to feel that compassion towards all living things, that acceptance of them and that compassion towards them, and strengthen that energy and radiate it out, basically out to the ends of the universe and back, um, energizing all the living things as it goes. And so if you're having a problem with it, you might want to kickstart it by thinking about the love that you have, like for a parent or a sibling or a mate or a friend or something that makes you very happy. Getting that kick starting going of that energy, that emotion, that intent that you would have, and then building it, building it, building it, and radiating it. I advise like a rain of like maybe glittery gold, sparkly energy, little bits of energy that are sparkly and that rain down on everything that's living. And if you're concentrating and blasting that energy as best you can, and you're keeping that harmonious, serene state while you're doing this, you do that for just, let's say, 10 minutes on any kind of regular basis, I don't know, 2 or 3 times a week. And I believe you're going to see some change. And it is conductive to different things too, like the chakras, the kundalini, to better visualization, to energy control, to all kinds of things that it's conductive to. Good things are conductive to good things, and bad things are conductive to bad things. I think we all get that that's a thing. So this grand abiding is a state of being, a state of mind together, and its intent, its focus, it's active. This grand abiding. Some people will say, "Oh, it's just passive," but it couldn't possibly be, compassion is not a passive thing. Part of it is, but you can't just be passive in life either. I mean, you have to do it. So definitely focusing on compassion, although it's tough. Yes, definitely. I mean, as you go through life, there will be people and situations that are just seemingly devastating. You know, just the it feels like the whole world's ending kind of thing. Very painful times. Life is suffering. You're going to suffer if you're going to live. And of course, you can't progress unless you're going to live. It's a progression, it's a building, it's a transformation. And you're going through it. And I think you're doing really well, both of you that have asked questions here, both Heather and Gita. I I think you just need some time and some practice and some regular study, and you're on your way. I don't see anything really being able to stop you or even severely slow you down unless you're going to give repeated intentional buy-in. You're going to propagate that on yourself intentionally. And don't put it past yourself to do that because people that are very learned and very practiced in the ways of compassion and being skilled in goodness can get there, and that can happen. It's so don't beat yourself up for not turning into Buddha on the first lifetime. We don't want to have expectations that we're going to just have this great transformation and it's just going to happen now. We ought to be able to be in the now and be happy where we are. Be happy that we're not as happy as we want to be yet. Be happy that we're on the way. We're on the path. We're working through these things. We're in motion. And you only can go through this once, this transformation. So you really should enjoy every part of it as best you can. And certainly when you look back, there's going to be things that you remember more fondly than when they were happening. That's certainly a case. So I want to deal with those things, expectations about the future and the rose-colored glasses we have of the past, fondly remembering things that weren't that fond back then. We want to be very reality-based. Anyway, I've probably gone past the time I should be for the length of these videos, but I want to thank everybody for showing up, and I want to thank you for having a listen. I hope that truth will remove delusion from your life the way light removes darkness. So this is Ari Manard for Monks of the Way. Once again, thank you for listening.